My précis today is on James P. Zappen's article, Francis Bacon and the Historiography of Scientific Rhetoric. The article opens by explaining that throughout the 1900s, historians have looked to Francis Bacon's works in order to show the origins of a particular style. Without indicating how he determined these views, Zappen selects three interpretations to study: positivistic science in the plain style, institutionalized science in a more complex and highly figured style, and democratic science. These interpretations, Zappen claims, are the result of individual perceptions and differences in ideology, and articulate different perceptions of how science and scientific rhetoric might serve the good of the community, whether scientific or social. The purpose of Zappen's article, then, is to review these different 20th century interpretations as well as supply his own. That Bacon's work reveals how the plain style promotes participation in democratic science, and that this was adopted by Puritans in the 1600s. Zappen researches and collects each of these interpretations and relies upon authors from the respective time period to show how Bacon could have been seen as a precedent for each. By referencing 6 different researchers, he illustrates that between the 1920s and the 1950s, historians saw Bacon as a precedent to the positivistic view of science and the plain style that characterized it. He then explains that between the 1960s to the present, historians looked to Bacon as the origin of their institutionalized science and its more complex and highly figured style. Zappen last explains another trend that locates democratic science within Bacon's work as well. In order to support his interpretation that the plain style is best used in regards to democratic science, Zappen analyzes how both the plain style and the imaginative style was used in Bacon's work. By referencing both Bacon's works and numerous secondary scholars, Zappen explains that the plain style was used in the explanation of the natural, the experimental, and the writings that dealt with the sense. The imaginative style was instead used to address the reason in order to move one to action. The plain style, Zappen claims, is then the best used for democratic science because it was these topics that Bacon permitted general participation. Zappen lastly shows how the Puritans in the 1640s and 1650s adopted the plain style in order to expand participation in education to all of the social classes. In his conclusion, Zappen does not generalize his interpretation. He states that he realizes that his interpretation represents only one ideology that is counter to the traditional interpretations he has described. He states that his view is only an alternative ideology of science and scientific rhetoric, an alternative perception of what is good for both the scientific and the social community. Zappen's work is then added to the number of interpretations of Bacon and represents an alternative ideology and vision that had not been previously disclosed.